She sent a message. "I'm turning off my phone. We're having a girls' night. Don't bother me." Savannah was smiling, as if she had already won. I didn't bother to reply. While she was indulging in her lies at that resort with him, I was putting Plan C into motion. I changed every lock and froze all the accounts. She came back hoping for forgiveness, but instead, she found locked doors and a letter. "My name is Garrett Davenport. I am 42 years old. For 19 years, I believed I knew the woman who slept next to me in bed. It turned out I never knew her at all. Perhaps I should have noticed sooner. The late meetings, after which she smelled of men's cologne instead of the office. The new habit of placing her phone screen down on any surface. The way she stopped caring about my day, but constantly mentioned Blake from sales. Blake Thornton. That name began appearing in her speech regularly, like a punctuation mark. But people tend to make up excuses when the truth is too ugly. You tell yourself she's just tired, that work requires dedication, that marriages go through different phases. For some people, maybe that's true. For us, it just became the excuse I kept telling myself while she packed her bags. Everything changed on a Friday in late September. I came home from the office early, which was extremely rare for an IT infrastructure director managing 3 departments. My team had completed the server migration ahead of schedule, and I decided to surprise Savannah by ordering food from her favorite Italian restaurant. The house was silent. Our 13-year-old daughter, Autumn, had left for the weekend to attend a science camp. Our 4-year-old son, Evan, was spending time with my parents. It was just me and the ticking of the kitchen clock. Then I heard her voice upstairs. She was laughing, lightly and carefreely. She hadn't laughed like that with me in a very long time. There was a kind of youthful freedom in that laugh, as if she had shed 15 years of mortgage payments from her shoulders. I froze at the bottom of the stairs with the cooling food in my hands. I know, Savannah cooed into the phone. Her tone was almost playful. "I'll have my bags packed by 6. Rachel will pick me up, and we'll be at the resort by 9. Then came a giggle I hadn't heard in years. "Stop it. No one will ever know. I'll turn off my phone for the whole weekend. Trust me, sweetheart. Everything will be perfect." Sweetheart. She wasn't talking to me, someone else. Slowly and carefully, I placed the bags on the table. You move like that when you're afraid of completely falling apart. I took out my phone and logged into our shared email account, which we used for paying bills and family bookings. There was a confirmation from the Mountain Vista Hotel. 2 rooms booked under Blake Thornton's name. The emergency contact was not me. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the screen, while her footsteps echoed above me. She wasn't packing for a girls' night. She was packing to go to him. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. Savannah came down with a duffel bag on her shoulder. Her hair was styled. Her lips wore a shade of wine-colored lipstick she only used for special occasions. She barely glanced at me. "Hey, honey," she said casually. "Rachel is already waiting outside. We're heading to a spa for the weekend. I need some time to relax." I said nothing. I just watched as she adjusted her earrings and smoothed her blouse in the hallway mirror. "Don't wait up," she added, pulling sunglasses from her purse. "If the weather's nice, I might stay an extra day." Her phone vibrated. She smiled, quickly typed something, and looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture. "And one more thing." Her tone turned cold and businesslike. She showed me her phone and, with a dramatic click, turned it off. "No contact until Monday. Don't bother me, okay? I need a break from all of this." I nodded. She left without kissing me goodbye or asking if I needed anything. The door closed and the house fell silent. I sat there, staring at the booking confirmation, and felt something inside me snap. It wasn't rage, but a terrifying clarity. She thought she was too smart, and me too busy and trusting to notice anything. 6 months ago, she would have been right, but not now. I opened my laptop, went to the folder with my financial documents, and found the file labeled Plan C. After hesitating for a second, I sent a message to my lawyer, Diana Graves. "Activating Plan C." The reply came 30 seconds later. "Finally, let's begin." Diana Graves didn't waste time on sympathy. That's why I hired her 3 years ago, when I first noticed the cracks in my marriage. She's not the kind of lawyer who pats your hand and promises everything will be fine. She asks what you want and clears the path to get it. Monday morning, I sat in her office on the 20th floor, overlooking the harbor. "Talk to me," Diana said, folding her hands on the desk. I slid a folder over to her. Inside were printouts of the hotel booking, bank statements showing unauthorized expenses, and emails Savannah thought she had deleted. Diana reviewed the pages with an unreadable face. Blake Thornton, she read the name. Corporate sales manager at her company. Yes, I confirmed. They've worked together for the last 4 years. And how long have you been tracking this? 6 months, since I found a receipt from a restaurant we'd never been to. 2 entrees, wine, dessert. She said it was a client meeting. I stayed quiet. Then it started happening again. Diana looked up. You didn't confront her? No, I wanted to be sure and be prepared. She gave a slight smile. Smart. Diana pulled a thin folder from her drawer. Remember the LLC we set up 3 years ago to own the downtown apartment? I nodded. That apartment was my passive income investment. Diana had suggested putting it in a company where I was the sole member. Savannah's name wasn't on any document. She sometimes stayed there when working late, kept clothes there, considered it a second home, but legally she had no claim to the property. Here's what we're going to do. Diana opened a page marked with a yellow sticky note. We filed a petition for asset redistribution under the dissolution clause you both signed during last year's refinancing. I remembered that day. Savannah was rushing to a meeting and signed the papers almost without looking. I explained it as standard bank conditions. That clause, Diana tapped the paper with her finger, allows for the immediate transfer of joint assets in cases of proven dishonesty or asset concealment. You have the proof. She used joint funds for personal trips with another man. That's classic concealment. What about the house? I asked. Also covered. The mortgage is in your name. She's listed as an occupant, not a co-owner. We can start the eviction process if necessary, but I doubt she'll fight once she realizes she has no legal standing. 3 years of preparation fit into a 15-minute conversation. When does it all take effect? Diana looked at her watch. I'll file the paperwork by the end of today. By Wednesday, the locks on the apartment will be changed. Her access to the joint accounts will be blocked, and you'll have full control over both properties. But understand, Garrett, once we start, there's no going back. She will attack you with everything she has. Accusations, threats, possibly attempts to smear your reputation. Are you ready? I remembered Savannah's face Friday evening, her smile, directed at the phone. The way she said, "Don't bother me," as if I were an annoying inconvenience. Yes, I answered. I'm ready. Monday night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my office, where Savannah never went, and methodically severed all the digital connections built over 19 years. First, the passwords. Bank accounts, streaming services, cloud storage, utility bills. I changed every single one, redirecting the 2-factor authentication codes to a new phone number she didn't know existed. Then came the financial audit. Our joint account held $42,000. I opened a new account in my name, transferred $38,000, leaving her $4,000. Enough to avoid accusations of fraud, but too little to fund her getaways. The credit cards were trickier. I couldn't just close them without raising suspicion, so I froze them. One call to the bank reporting suspicious activity, and everything was blocked pending investigation. By 2 in the morning, I had dismantled 18 years of shared digital life. Every account, every saved password, every automatic payment was gone. Then I found the second phone. It was in the nightstand drawer under some old magazines. A cheap, basic phone bought with cash. I turned it on and opened the messages. 214 texts between Savannah and Blake. Some dated back 2 years. I read them all. The early ones were flirtatious. Jokes, compliments, offers to grab coffee. Then the tone changed. Plans for lunchtime meetups, weekend trips disguised as conferences, and finally, blatant exchanges. They discussed me as an obstacle to be circumvented, a problem needing a solution. One message made me go cold. "He'll never leave," Savannah wrote 6 months ago. "He's too comfortable, but that's fine. I'm not asking him to leave. I'm just not going to pretend he matters anymore." I stared at that sentence until the screen went dark. Then I forwarded the entire conversation to my email, downloaded the photos, and turned off the device. She thought I didn't matter. By Wednesday morning, she would understand how wrong she was. Tuesday afternoon, I met with Diana again. She had filed the paperwork on an expedited basis. The locks at the apartment are being changed tomorrow morning, she informed me. I've also rented a storage unit. You need to pack her things from both houses and move them there by the end of the week. What about our daughter? Autumn was supposed to return Friday. You'll need to explain things to her, Diana said carefully. Age appropriately, without unnecessary anger. She doesn't need the details. She needs stability. I nodded. Autumn was very perceptive and had likely felt the tension between us for some time. And Evan? Diana's face softened. He's 4. Just keep his routine consistent. Kids that age feel stress, but they don't understand the reasons. I leaned back in my chair. There's something else. I pulled out the DNA test results I had ordered 3 months earlier. I did it after noticing that Evan had hazel eyes, not blue like mine or brown like Savannah's. The probability of paternity was 0%. Diana read the document twice. When did you get this? She asked quietly. August. It explains why she so carefully planned my business trips and Blake's time with the child. Diana placed the paper on the desk. This changes things, Garrett. If Blake is the biological father and they hid it for 4 years, that's fraud. We can use this in court, but remember, it could hurt Evan in the future. I thought about my son, about how he calls me dad and runs to me when he scrapes his knee. He is my son, I said firmly. Biology won't change that. But Savannah doesn't get to rewrite history and pretend nothing happened. Then we'll include this in the filing, Diana nodded. Full disclosure of facts. Garrett, you are a more decent man than many in your position would be. Savannah came home Monday around 7 in the evening. I heard her car pull into the driveway, the trunk slam, and her heels click on the pavement. She was humming something. I was sitting in the living room, documents spread out on the coffee table. Hey, she said casually, dropping her bag by the door. How was your weekend? I looked at her. She looked rested, as if she had truly returned from vacation, not from a betrayal. Fine, I replied calmly. Yours? Amazing. The spa treatments were wonderful. Hot stone massage, facial, top-notch. Rachel says hi, by the way. Rachel, her fake alibi. I wondered if her friend knew she was being used as cover. Savannah walked into the kitchen, poured herself some wine, and leaned against the counter. You didn't text me all weekend. I thought you'd at least check in on me. You told me not to bother you, I reminded her, not looking up. So I didn't. She laughed lightly. Right. I just thought you'd miss me. I slowly closed my laptop, walked over to the kitchen island, and placed my hands on the granite countertop. I want to ask you something, I said in a level voice. Savannah's smile faded slightly. Okay? Where exactly were you this weekend? I told you. A spa trip with Rachel and the girls. Which one? She blinked, confused. What? Which spa, Savannah? What was it called? Her fingers tightened on her wine glass. What does it matter? Just answer the question. Mountain Vista, she said quickly. Up north. I told you all about it. I nodded. And who else was there? What do you mean, who else? Just the girls. I pulled out my phone, opened the gallery, and turned the screen to her. It was a screenshot from Rachel's Instagram story. A candid shot by the pool at the resort. 3 women in robes, laughing, and in the far left corner, slightly blurred but perfectly recognizable, stood Blake Thornton, shirtless, leaning on a lounge chair, drink in hand. Savannah stared at the photo. Her face went pale. I can explain everything, she began. Don't, I cut her off. My voice was colder than ever. Don't insult me with your excuses. I know where you were. I know who with. I know about Blake. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She set down her wine glass, her hands visibly shaking. Garrett, it's not at all what you think. Yes, it is exactly what I think. I cut her off again. Stop lying to me. Savannah's expression changed. First panic, then defiance. So what now? You're going to leave me over one mistake? Mistakes? I almost laughed. Savannah, you've been planning this for 2 years. I saw the messages. I read every single exchange between you and Blake. I know about the secret phone, the hotel bookings. I know about the joint account you were slowly siphoning money from for your secret trips. Her pallor shifted to anger. You went through my things. Your things. I raised my voice slightly. We're married, Savannah, or we were married. Everything in this house is our joint property. including the evidence of your infidelity. She stepped back, shaking her head. You can't do this. You have no right. I've already done everything, I said sharply. Diana filed the paperwork yesterday. By Wednesday, the case will be in motion. You no longer have access to the apartment, the joint accounts, or any rights to the property in my name. Savannah's eyes widened. You can't kick me out. This is my home. No, I said quietly. This is my home. You were a tenant here, and that status is about to be revoked. She stared at me, a mix of disbelief and fury in her eyes. Then she grabbed her purse and keys. This isn't over, she hissed. No, I replied. It's finished. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in the silence, feeling only cold, clear resolve. Let her run to Blake. Let her see how little he truly cares about her when the consequences hit. I took out my phone and texted Diana. She knows everything. The clock is ticking. The reply came instantly. Good. Let her panic. Wednesday morning was cold and gray. I woke up at 5, brewed coffee, and sat on the back patio watching the sun break through the clouds. At 7, Diana texted. Locks changed, storage unit ready. She is officially denied access. I didn't smile or feel triumph. I just checked that item off my mental list and moved to the next task. That afternoon, Autumn returned from science camp. I picked her up from the school parking lot, watching her toss her gear bag and a marine biology poster she'd made with her team into the car. Hey, kiddo, I said, pulling out of the lot. How was camp? Amazing! Her eyes were shining. We dissected a squid and learned about bioluminescence theory. Dad, did you know some jellyfish literally glow in the dark? I did not. She launched into explanations about photophores and chemical reactions. For a few minutes, I let myself just be her father, not a man dismantling his marriage, just a dad listening to his daughter talk about science. But when we pulled into the driveway, she fell silent. Where's Mom's car? Autumn asked. She's going to stay at the apartment for a few days, I said carefully. We have some things to discuss, adult things. Autumn turned to me. Her gaze seemed older than 13. You're getting a divorce. It wasn't a question. Yes, I confirmed. We're getting a divorce. She nodded slowly, staring at the windshield. Because of Blake? My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. You knew? Dad, I'm not stupid, Autumn said quietly. She was texting him for a whole year, always smiling at her phone, always talking about late meetings. I figured it out. I sat there, realizing my 13-year-old daughter had been carrying this burden alone. Why didn't you tell me? She shrugged, her eyes glistening with tears. I thought maybe it would stop. I thought she'd just stop. I reached over and squeezed her hand. None of this is your fault, Autumn. None of it. I know, she whispered, but her voice cracked. We sat in the car for another 10 minutes. She cried, and I held her hand. And when we finally went inside, I understood that she had lost something that could never be fully restored. That night, after Autumn went to bed and Evan was asleep, I sat in my office and opened the file I had been avoiding. The private investigator's report. I had hired him 2 months earlier on Diana's recommendation. A former cop turned detective specializing in infidelity cases. His name was Tom Briggs, and he was thorough. The report was 63 pages long. Blake Thornton wasn't just Savannah's lover. He was married with 2 children, 8 and 6 years old. His wife, Jennifer, worked as a nurse at the county hospital. They lived in a development 20 minutes from us. But there was a detail that made my blood run cold. Blake had done this before. 3 other women in the same company over the last 7 years. One filed a harassment complaint. Another quit after he promised to leave his wife and didn't. A third was transferred to another office when their affair became common knowledge. Savannah wasn't special to him, just another victim. The report also contained financial documents showing that Blake and Savannah had opened a joint savings account 4 months earlier. They had deposited $6,000, money slowly siphoned from our joint budget. I hadn't even noticed. The account was called Future Plans. I stared at those words until they blurred. They were planning to leave, both of them, to take the money and start fresh, to abandon their families as if we were expired lease agreements. I forwarded the entire report to Diana with a short message. Use everything. The reply came 5 minutes later, already preparing the motion. This is the end, Garrett. She won't recover from this. I closed the laptop and went upstairs. I checked on Evan, fixed his blanket, looked in on Autumn. She was still sleeping, still clutching her phone. Then I went to my own room, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let myself feel it. Not sadness, not grief, relief. Because for the first time in 2 years, I didn't have to pretend anymore. Thursday afternoon, I did what I had been planning for weeks. I drove to Blake Thornton's office. It was a 12-story glass and steel building downtown, headquarters of a mid-sized trading firm that prided itself on its corporate culture and team-building retreats. I parked in the visitor lot, walked through the lobby, and took the elevator to the 9th floor. Blake's office was in the back, a corner space with windows overlooking the harbor. His name was printed in gold letters on the door, Corporate Sales Manager. I didn't knock, I simply opened the door and walked in. Blake flinched and looked up from his computer. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s, groomed, the kind of guy who wears expensive suits and overdoes the cologne. "Can I help you?" he asked, already reaching for his phone. "Yes," I replied, closing the door behind me. "You can start by explaining why you're sleeping with my wife." His face went white. "I think you have the wrong person." "Blake Thornton, correct?" I stepped closer. "Sales manager, married to Jennifer, 2 kids, lives on Oakmont Drive." He stood up abruptly, raising his hands. "Look, I don't know what Savannah told you." "She didn't tell me anything," I cut him off. "I found out everything myself. It took some time, but I got it all." Blake's jaw tightened. "This is harassment. I'm calling security." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "But before you do, know this. I've already contacted your wife. I sent her copies of the hotel bookings, printouts of the messages, and the details of that joint account you opened with Savannah. She's meeting with a divorce lawyer this afternoon." Blake's hand froze over the phone. "You did what?" "I told her the truth," I said. "What you've been avoiding for 3 years." He slowly sat down, his face turning ashen. "You had no right." "I had every right." My voice remained cold and even. "You destroyed my family. I simply returned the favor." Blake stared at me with a mix of disbelief and fury. "Savannah said you didn't care, that you checked out long ago." "She lied," I said flatly, "just like she lied to you about leaving me, and just like you lied to Jennifer about working late." He didn't answer. He just sat there, crushed by the weight of his own decisions. "Here's what's going to happen next," I continued. "You're going to stay away from Savannah. No calls, no texts, no contact. If I find out you've contacted her, I will make sure your HR department learns about the other women you've had affairs with in this company, including Rachel Hendricks and the others." Blake's head snapped up. "How do you know?" "I know everything," I said quietly, "and I don't bluff." I turned and walked to the door. Before leaving, I looked back at him one last time. "You thought you'd get away with it all? No. You were just digging your own grave." I left him there, silent and broken. By the time I reached my car, Diana had texted, "Blake's wife filed for divorce. She's using your evidence. It's getting very ugly." I replied with 3 words. "Good. Let it." Savannah showed up at the downtown apartment Thursday evening. I didn't see it, but the security cameras captured everything. Diana sent me the recording Friday morning. In the video, Savannah pulls up in her car around 6:30, takes a suitcase from the trunk, and walks toward the entrance with the same casual confidence she'd displayed all week. She swiped her keycard at the lobby door. Access denied. She tried again. Same red light, same error signal. Then she tried to open the main entrance with a regular key. It didn't fit. The locks had been changed. I watched her face change on the recording. First confusion, then irritation. She pulled out her phone, probably trying to call me. I had blocked her number 2 days earlier. Then she walked to the mailboxes. Her key didn't work there either. The box was sealed, her name removed from the resident list. That's when she noticed the envelope. It was taped to the glass door at eye level, a plain white one. Her name was printed in bold letters on the front. She tore it off and opened it right there in the lobby. Inside were 3 sheets. The first was a notice of lease termination, effective immediately. The second was a document about the transfer of ownership, stating the apartment had been transferred to a new legal entity to which she had no connection. The third sheet was blank, except for 4 sentences right in the middle. "You asked me not to bother you. I listened. Your apartment already belongs to someone else. For any questions, contact Diana Graves." I watched Savannah read it once, then again. Her hands began to shake. She looked around the empty lobby, as if someone might come out and explain it was all a mistake. No one came. She tried calling the building manager. He didn't answer. She tried talking to the receptionist at the front desk. She was politely informed that she was no longer listed as a resident, and they could not allow non-residents in. Then she did something I didn't expect. She sat down on the floor of the lobby, her back against the wall, and just stared at the papers in her hands. The camera recorded for another 11 minutes. She didn't move, didn't cry, just sat there, coming to terms with the fact that in 72 hours, she had lost access to everything. Finally, she stood up, grabbed her suitcase, and walked out. The timestamp on the video showed 7:43 p.m. By 8 o'clock, my phone started blowing up with calls from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. By 9, she tried to reach me through Autumn's phone. I had warned my daughter not to engage. At 10:15 p.m., she showed up at the house. I heard her car pull into the driveway, the door slam, and her heels on the pavement. She started pounding on the front door, shouting my name. I didn't get up from the couch. I just sat there with the remote in my hand, watching a baseball game I had been ignoring all evening. "Garrett!" Savannah's voice from behind the door was shrill and desperate. "Open the door! We need to talk!" I took a sip of beer, didn't move. "I know you're in there. Your truck is here. Open this damn door." Autumn appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes wide. I raised a hand and shook my head. She went back to her room. Savannah pounded harder. "You can't just kick me out. That's my apartment. My things are in there." I stood up, walked to the door, and spoke through it, without opening it. "There is nothing of yours in that apartment, Savannah. You gave up your rights when you signed the refinancing documents. Read the papers Diana sent." "This is illegal. You tricked me." "I explained the meaning of every document you signed," I said calmly. "You just couldn't be bothered to read them. That's not my problem." Silence from the other side. Then her voice came again, quieter but laced with venom. "Blake will help me. He'll sort everything out." I almost laughed. "Blake has plenty of his own problems. Jennifer filed for divorce this morning, using the same evidence I gave her. Bank statements, hotel receipts, text logs. He's not going to take care of anyone." More silence. This time, it was long. "You're ruining my life," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You ruined your own life." I just stopped pretending nothing was happening. I went back to the couch. The pounding stopped. A minute later, I heard her car start and drive away. Diana texted me at 10:30. She called my office 17 times. "I'm not picking up. Let her sink." I replied, "Good. Let her feel what it's like to be ignored." Saturday morning, I sat Autumn down in the kitchen. Evan was spending the day with my parents, giving me time for a conversation I had been dreading. "We need to talk about your brother," I said, placing a cup of tea in front of her. Autumn looked up from her phone, hearing the weight in my voice. "What about him?" I pulled out the DNA test results and slid them across the table. She read the first page, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. "Evan isn't your son?" she whispered. "Biologically, no," I said carefully. "But that doesn't change how I feel about him. He's still my boy. I've raised him since the day he was born. That doesn't go away." Autumn stared at the papers, her hands trembling. "Does Mom know you know?" "Not yet, but she will soon." "Who's the father?" she asked, though her voice made it clear she already guessed. "Blake." Autumn's face hardened. "So she lied about this for 4 years?" "Yes." She put the papers down on the table, her jaw set tight. "What happens to Evan?" "Nothing changes for him," I said with all the firmness I could muster. "I'm going to fight for sole custody. He stays with us. I won't let him be turned into a tool for manipulation." Autumn listened, her eyes filling with tears. "Does Evan know?" she asked. "No, and he won't know until he's old enough to understand. Right now, I am his father, and that's all that matters." My daughter reached out and touched my hand. "I'm sorry, Dad." "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said gently. "None of this is your fault, just as none of it is Evan's fault." We sat in the kitchen for a while longer, bathed in the morning sunlight. When Autumn went up to her room, I dialed Diana's number. "I'm ready to file the petition for paternity fraud," I said as soon as she answered. "You're sure?" the lawyer asked. "This will be a tough process. Savannah won't give up easily." "Let her try," I said flatly. She lied for 4 years. Blake lied to his wife for just as long. It's time to bring the truth to light. Diana paused for a moment. Garrett, I have to warn you. Once we set this in motion, the information will become public. Sooner or later, Evan will find out. Are you ready for that conversation? I confirmed that I was. When that day comes, I will explain to him that what makes a father is not biology, but devotion and presence in a child's life. And I have been there for him every single day. Diana's voice softened. You're a good man, Garrett. I'm just doing what my conscience tells me. That's what makes you a good one. The rest of the morning, I spent drafting a letter for Savannah's lawyer. The text was perfectly clear and allowed no other interpretation. The results of the genetic test confirmed that the probability of a biological relationship between Garrett Davenport and Evan is 0%. The biological parent is Blake Thornton. Under state law, these actions constitute paternity fraud. The child remains under my full custody. The visitation schedule with Savannah will be determined by the court. Blake Thornton has been officially notified and will be held financially responsible for child support. I read the document 3 times, checking every word, then sent it to Diana. The reply came 10 minutes later. Petition filed. This is a radical step, Garrett. She will respond with fury. I wrote back. Let her try. I'm armed. In the afternoon, a call came from an unknown number. It was Savannah. You told Blake about Evan? She hissed, breathless with rage. I told his wife, I said calmly. Jennifer deserved to know her husband has a child with another woman. You had no right. You forfeited your rights when you lied to me for 4 years. I cut her off. You let me raise another man's son while you planned your escape. Don't lecture me on rights. There was silence on the line, then her desperate voice. Evan will hate you when this all comes out. Maybe, I replied. But at least I will be honest with him. That's something you're incapable of. I ended the call before she could say anything else. Soon after, Diana called back. Blake's lawyer had been in touch. His client was contesting the results and demanding a retest. Let him spend his money. The outcome will be the same, I said. It also turned out Blake was trying to block the payments, claiming he never consented to being a father. I laughed bitterly. He gave his consent the moment he got involved with a married woman. Demand full child support, I instructed. Make him pay. This is a real war now, Diana stated. Good. I've been ready for it since the day she left. The following week was like the systematic dismantling of everything Savannah had built on lies. On Monday, Jennifer, Blake's wife, obtained a restraining order barring Savannah from approaching their family. It turned out the soon-to-be ex-wife had shown up at their home Sunday evening, demanding to see Blake, and Jennifer had called the police. Savannah spent 3 hours at the station before being released with a warning. Diana forwarded me the police report, and I added it to my collection of evidence. On Tuesday, HR at Savannah's company initiated an internal investigation into her relationship with Blake. Someone had sent an anonymous tip, complete with screenshots of messages and proof of corporate ethics violations. While office romances weren't strictly forbidden, Blake was effectively her supervisor, creating a conflict of interest. I hadn't sent that tip, but I had a good idea who did. Rachel Hendricks, Savannah's so-called best friend, had her own scores to settle with Blake. Betrayal turned out to be mutual. By Wednesday, both had been suspended without pay pending the investigation. No pay, no building access, no contact with colleagues. That afternoon, Diana called. Blake's lawyer had proposed a settlement. He was willing to pay child support if we dropped criminal fraud charges. I agreed to consider it only if he provided a written acknowledgement of paternity and committed to supporting Evan until age 18. Blake signed all the paperwork. His fear of exposure in front of his wife outweighed his reluctance to pay. As for Savannah, she was left with nothing. No access to joint accounts, no income, no property. She temporarily moved in with her sister, but the sister's husband had already asked Diana how long the relative would need to support herself. I felt no gloating or triumph, just an emptiness where 19 years of marriage used to be. Thursday, I picked up Autumn after school. She had been withdrawn all week. "How are you?" I asked on the way home. "Fine," she said, staring out the window. "There are rumors going around school about Mom. Kids are asking questions." "What do you tell them?" "That it's none of their business." "Dad, is she really not coming back?" "Not the way things were," I said carefully. "The court will set a visitation schedule, but she won't be living with us anymore." Autumn nodded slowly. "Good. I don't want to see her here." There was an unfamiliar harshness in her voice. Autumn. No, Dad, she cut me off. She lied to all of us. She hurt you and Evan. She can't just come back and pretend everything is okay. I squeezed her hand. You have a right to be angry, but don't let the anger consume you. She is still your mother. Biology doesn't make a parent, my daughter said quietly. You taught me that yourself. I had no answer. She was right. On Friday, Savannah's lawyer requested mediation. They wanted to discuss visitation and asset division without going to trial. Diana called me immediately. They're waving the white flag. She knows she'll lose in court. Savannah was asking for supervised visits, temporary support while she looked for work, and permission to retrieve her personal belongings. Diana recommended agreeing to 6 months of support and supervised visits. Do it, I confirmed, but make it clear this is our only offer. If she refuses, we go to court and demand full custody with minimal rights for her. Over the weekend, I talked to Evan. He was too young for complicated explanations, but could feel the changes. Where's Mom? He asked, playing with his toy cars. Mom is going to live somewhere else for a while, I said, sitting down next to him. You'll still see her, just not every day. Why? Because sometimes adults need to live apart, but that doesn't mean we don't love you. The boy looked at me with his brown eyes that I now knew belonged to someone else. But when he smiled and climbed into my lap for a hug, that fact stopped mattering. I love you, Daddy, he whispered. And I love you, little man, always. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Savannah was granted supervised visits twice a month and minimal support for 6 months. No rights to the business, savings, or real estate I had built over 2 decades. Blake sent his first check for $2,800. His marriage to Jennifer lasted another 2 months before she filed for divorce. Rumor had it he moved to another state, trying to outrun his reputation. Rachel Hendricks contacted me once to apologize for her long silence. I told her I didn't blame her. She had been a victim in her own way, too. Savannah eventually found an administrative job at a small firm. She showed up on time for visits with the children and behaved quietly. Autumn barely spoke to her. Evan, due to his age, still hugged her when they met. I watched from the sidelines, not interfering. The children would build their own relationships with her. That was no longer my concern. My parents helped me. My father, who had lost his savings due to Savannah's schemes, never once blamed me. He was just there, playing with his grandchildren, and reminding me that family isn't blood. It's the people who stay by your side when things are hard. Autumn blossomed. She joined a robotics club, made new friends, and shed the burden of her mother's secrets. One night at dinner, she confessed she wanted to become an engineer. Just like you, Dad, she smiled. You'll be better than me, I replied. In the fall, Evan started kindergarten. The teachers praised his curiosity. He made friends easily and laughed often. For him, it was just life, with no scars from the past. 6 months later, I sold the downtown apartment. The proceeds went into an education fund for both children. The house on Maple Street I rented out, no longer wanting to deal with its affairs. Work was going well. The infrastructure modernization project I had led for 3 years finished ahead of schedule. Management offered me a promotion with frequent travel, but I turned it down. The children needed me home. I started tentatively dating. One woman, a teacher named Claire, asked me why there was no bitterness in me. I admitted that there had been bitterness, but bitterness is just locked up anger. I chose to channel that energy into the children. She smiled. That relationship didn't work out, but the conversation stayed with me. One December evening, I sat on the patio with a cup of coffee, watching the first snow fall. Inside, Autumn was helping Evan with his homework. Their laughter drifted out. My phone buzzed. A message from Diana. Blake's lawyer said he was moving to Oregon and wanted to revisit the support terms. I replied, "No chance." She asked how I was doing. "Good, truly good," I typed back. And it was the truth. The snow continued to fall. The night grew darker. But in my house, the lights were on. My children were safe. For the first time in years, I was not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had built something real. Not perfect, but honest. Not without pain, but free from lies. Savannah had tried to erase me from my own life, but in the end, she erased herself. I reclaimed everything she had tried to destroy. Now the foundation was stronger, not because it had never been tested, but because it had survived.